So if you have little ones at home, little kids, you know one of the hardest things is to get them to focus in the morning. And if I can get to the TV before the rest of the family, I will turn on lo-fi music because it just seems to get everybody in a good mood, get them focused, we get ready on time, and we get to where we're going when we need to be there. So I thought, why can't I make my own lo-fi track with Josh here in the studio? So we tried that with a piece of gear, using it outside of its intended purposes. But we had fun. So my entire family, very musical family. My wife was musical, I was musical growing up. So our kids have kind of gotten into those tendencies right along with us. And lo-fi has become the thing that we turn on when something's happening, when it's time to get down to business. If we're cleaning the house, if we're doing homework, if we're trying to get ready in the morning, it's great background music. It's just kind of makes you feel good about what you're doing. So I wanted to take a stab at this. Now, lo-fi can be something that's like very electronic, but I knew in my style of fashion, I'm not very good with virtual instruments. I can use them. I'm not very good at programming stuff. So if I was going to do something, it had to be fully analog. Let's go all in on real instruments. And using a good DI is part of that. Now, DIs are kind of weird. DIs kind of have this they're just utility tools to me. I don't really think too much about them or why I pick one over the other, but I know I tend to reach for my favorites. And by the way, I've got a whole buffet of DIs. And if you want to see the whole lineup and experimenting with them on different sources, go over to our other channel, Phantom Power Hour, where we played with this. We played with every DI I have. So if you want to see how this stacks up to a bunch of different ones and how they stack up to each other and the use cases they're in and a really deep dive into the feature set, head over there.
Can I be honest?
Yeah.
I like playing into that more. The high end doesn't feel exaggerated.
Yeah. Much longer video, much deeper dive. We had a lot of fun. But this, Radial, by the way, Radial did sponsor this video. They sent this over, but they don't get to see anything about this. They don't see the video before it goes up. They don't approve it. I don't have anything particular I have to say. In fact, I think the way I used this, they probably would not approve of. So thanks, Radial, for sponsoring today's video. Radial is not a company known for making stuff like this. Some may disagree, but I believe how Radial is mostly viewed as a very utility-based company. They make tools to fix specific problems. And if you have a hyper niche issue that you're trying to hook up, if you're trying to connect Weird Box 1 to Weird Box 2, they make something that can go between there and make that thing work for you. Radial is that company. They have identified so many issues in the industry and fixed it with all these tools that you can have. So this, in that way, is kind of outside of their typical known for product layout. And I think that's why this has some pretty bad reviews. I think this paired with a higher price tag for something like Radial. Right now it's $9.49 on Sweetwater. This is not a cheap DI in the world of DIs. However, when you stack it up against some of the other favorites that we have here, like my red DI, it is right in line with that price tag. What this really seems to go after is the Avalon U5, a super popular DI. It has some pretty tonal things you could do with it. It was a flexible little box. I tend to like it. With a box like that, you either love it or you hate it. I liked it. This seems to be going right after that market. And in that case, this is actually a little bit cheaper with a few more features, and we can talk about that. The other interesting thing here is, I think they marketed this wrong. They're calling it a DI. We basically use this thing as a preamp for most of the session. I don't know how I'm 5 minutes into the video and I'm just now saying that, but yeah, this is a DI. However, we used an XLR to a TRS cable, hooked this thing up and used it as a preamp. We recorded drums with it. We used this as a preamp to record drums with a microphone into this thing because it has that much headroom, and it was clean. It sounded good. we recorded drums, bass, guitar, Rhodes, acoustic guitar, and not just using like a 57, which of course we did on drums, recording snaps with it, shakers with a handkerchief that I'm rubbing between my hands, so the sensitivity here is on par. Not just that, we wheeled over ribbon mics. I thought, why not go ham with it? Let's pull over an R44 and record acoustic. And it took it like a champ. It sounded great. And of course, yeah, we used it as a DI too, going with bass. And then our Rhodes. But we actually use this more as a preamp. Now, in context of the actual studio, I have reached for this on bass every session since I've gotten it.
Shaking to the beat of the drums, and then we hear them.
The low end on this feels so good, and the red DI is awesome and it does sound great. However, it does have a colored input, so when you want something like crazy clean, this can get way cleaner than the red DI, way cleaner than a lot of my other DIs, but it can also, with this color knob, get way dirtier and insanely aggressive, which again, we go way into detail on Phantom Power Hour. Go check that video out. Real quick and dirty here, input through normal DI stuff. You've got your level, an optical compressor with 2 different settings here. You've got your color, which is hitting a custom transformer inside the box, which gets really, really hairy, especially dependent on the input levels that you're feeding it. High pass filter, which is directly related to the color, so you can keep your low end going right through this thing and just color the top end. Really cool. Presence boost, again, super useful when we were running ribbon mics through this. And on bass, that sounds great. Now, if you have a noisy bass, it's going to boost that noise floor on it. It can get pretty gross with certain circuits, but on a clean source, that presence knob is very tasty. And obviously ground lift. On the back here, mic output, line output, flexible depending what you want to go into after. You have your process output and then another input on the back. So if this was rack mounted, and it does come with rack ears, you can access it from the back. Also, you have a synth input. I never use this. This isn't my world, but for older synths and drum machines that have that hotter input, this gives you that little extra bit of headroom and can kind of accommodate for those higher things. So, and you've also got a pad. The thing is built like a tank. It's radial. It's heavy. I feel like anything radial could basically drop off a cliff and it would be fine. So since we use this for everything that we were doing in the studio, it is a 1-channel DI, so we did have to single track everything, so we sampled out the drums. Of course, we can't make a lo-fi track without making a sample pack, so if you want to download that for free, there will be a link down below. I don't know what we're going to call that yet, but go ahead and get that for free if you want. There will be all the sounds that you heard on here, all the drum samples, little loops of the guitars and the Rhodes and all that stuff, and a bunch of stuff that Josh had fun with, but we decided to omit entirely. So there's a fun little extras down there. Why don't you go check it out? So we took samples of the drums, and then Josh took a couple minutes to sort through that stuff and basically build it into a beat that we built the rest of the song on. Once we got that finished, we realized that we needed a little bit more harmonic content out of this, so Josh picked up an acoustic guitar, and I thought, what do I love on acoustic guitars? Ribbon mics. So why not an R44? This thing chewed up and spit that thing out like it was nobody's business. Again, why is this not called a mic pre? I have no idea. Having the presence knob, especially on a ribbon mic, it was like boosting the top end, which I would typically do on any ribbon mic, anywhere. So after that, we used the HDI mildly in a way that resembles what it was designed for, recording DI with Rhodes, which immediately sounded gorgeous. Just some simple rolled chords, a little bit of color saturation from the HDI, a little bit of Valhalla, and it sat right in. By the way, Valhalla Vintage for $50. What are you doing with your life? Go pick it up. So next up was right in line for what this thing was designed for, seemingly, and that was bass. So Josh hooked up the DI and the bass, and honestly, like, that was the most boring part. Yeah, it sounded really good. It sounded perfect. It sounded great. That's a great DI, but that was the most boring part about using this box. And this is where I kind of think, like, the marketing of this gets a little interesting. Like, this is way more than just a DI. Its usefulness goes far beyond that expectation of just using it as like a single line DI. Just with the added XLR input here, just to experiment with. Like, we kind of got around that with a cable, with a custom cable that went XLR to TRS, allowing us to get into the box. Yeah, it does not have phantom power, but something like this could be basically your one preamp and DI for your entire home studio. If you were on a smaller interface, if you needed something with color, like, man, this is it. This can do that. You have basically a very dumbed down EQ with your presence. You have a killer saturation here, a little bit of a compressor. You basically have a channel strip right here. It's interesting that it is just a DI and marketed as such, because you can use it as a channel strip. So after doing bass, we pulled over my old Mesa amp and another ribbon mic, the Biodynamic M160. It sounded awesome, just to float on top of everything else. Josh spent some time with the session, kind of turned it into a song, and this is a different vibe for the channel. But let us know if you like this, because this is super fun for us. I really enjoy doing something like this, and I know Josh does too. So if you guys dig this approach to using gear, a way I tend to do, like, let me see how I can use it, how it's not intended, let us know. I would love to do more of this stuff. If you like this video and you want to check out other stuff, and again, this exhibits how Radial is making like so many different things, go check out this video on the nuance, like basically the one monitor control you need for your home studio. See you guys.